I'm going back to my hometown to give birth. You're in the way, so can you please move out one day after coming back from work? I found my sister, who was supposed to have moved out after getting married years ago, in my room. She was ostentatiously stroking her swollen belly, but even seeing her like this, I couldn't say anything. Staring blankly around the room, I was stunned, and my sister let out a vulgar laugh. Having an old maid like you around is just a nuisance, she said. I threw away everything in the room to make it easier for you to leave, so you should be thankful. Everything was as usual in my room when I left for work in the morning, but now it's completely empty. Not even the bed, table, rug, or curtains were left. Literally nothing was there. The only thing was my sister standing defiantly in the middle of the room. Your phone and wallet are in your bag, right? So you won't die of exposure, and you shouldn't be mooching off our parents anymore. It's about time you started living on your own, all right? I didn't think about taking my things back or kicking my sister out. I just wanted to leave because I didn't want to see her face anymore. As I turned my back, I could hear my sister laughing uncontrollably. You can't say anything even now, aren't you too weak? She mocked. I ignored her obvious mockery and continued down the hallway. My father was on the phone in the living room, and my mother was probably preparing dinner with my father's cheerful voice and my mother's humming in the background. I passed through the front door, breathing in the night air. I readjusted my bag on my shoulder and headed towards the Hotel Rich downtown. On the way, it suddenly hit me. Come to think of it, who's going to pay for the house's mortgage from now on? Well, whatever, I'm Nancy, a 27-year-old office worker. While working as an office worker, I also have a side job. I live a steady life as an office worker, but I do what I love in my side job. I dabble in video editing, web writing, and running a blog, among other things. At 27, one is often considered to be at the age to think about marriage in society, but I'm not very interested in love or marriage. It's partly because I enjoy my work, but also because my sister was treated like a princess at home, and I felt ostracized by my family. So I don't really have the desire to build a happy family. I have always lived at home with my parents. I share household chores with my mother, though I mostly do them myself. My mom comes home from her part-time job feeling really wiped out, and seeing her like that makes me think I, being younger, should take care of the household chores. Ever since I started working, I've been contributing double the amount to our household expenses compared to a friend of mine who lives alone in New York. I'm more of an indoor person who likes studying and didn't go out much even during my student days, so I don't have many desires for material things. Aside from saving, I didn't have much use for the money I earned. Even after becoming a working adult, I didn't go out much, so I contributed more to the household expenses, thinking it would ease my parents' burden a bit. Plus, since last year, I've been putting in money for the mortgage as well, at my parents' request. My parents seem to think that since I'm responsible and earn a decent living, it's no problem for me to contribute more towards the household expenses and mortgage. However, I feel like my parents aren't that interested in me. That's probably because their attention has always been on my sister Maria, who's a year younger than me. Maria is outgoing and very active. She used to go out somewhere every weekend during her student days. My parents naturally assumed that Maria's lifestyle required money, so even when she was living at home, they never asked her to contribute to the household expenses, let alone the mortgage. It seems like my parents have ingrained the idea that I, the older sister, am low maintenance, while Maria requires more attention. A while ago, Maria moved out to live on her own. Her place of work isn't far from our parents' house, and I wondered why she wanted to live alone. When I asked her, she said, "Because I want to experience living by myself. I want to go out at night and have my boyfriend over." That was far from the answer I was expecting. I thought she wanted to make things easier for our parents, or wanted to be independent. On the other hand, I had no intention of leaving home, thinking it natural to help each other out since we're a family living together, even if it means putting in a bit more for the household expenses. Then, when I returned home after a while, Maria was waiting for me. "Hey, I'm getting married, and I want you to come to both families' gatherings. It's going to be held at a traditional restaurant in New York," she said. "Make sure you wear proper clothes, okay? If you wear your usual plain clothes, I'll be laughed at." Even so, I didn't own any flashy clothes. I decided to attend in my usual formal clothes. After all, this is the most respectful attire I have. Maria's fiancé seemed sincere and was a genuinely nice young man. Nice to meet you, he said, leaving a very good impression on me. I thought Maria had chosen a really good partner for herself. Maybe being with him will calm her down a bit, I thought, feeling quite sisterly. Initially, both families were quite formal and tense, but as the drinks flowed, the formality and tension eased, and the conversation shifted towards talks of children after marriage. Our family, embarrassingly, has our eldest daughter, Nancy, who is almost 30 and still unmarried, with no plans of marriage. So it looks like we'll only be able to see grandchildren from our younger daughter, Maria. We're so eager to see them, my parents said. When I get married, I want to have kids right away. Maybe 3, Maria said, and the conversation got more animated. Suddenly, I noticed Maria's husband's once cheerful smile had turned into a strained expression. Looking uncomfortable, I felt the same discomfort. I wished it would end soon. After that, my parents started doting on Maria as an investment for their first grandchild. If Maria mentioned eating this food is said to make it easier to get pregnant, they would immediately go buy it and tell her, "Maria, eat a lot of this." There was a day they went shopping together for dresses after hearing tight clothes might be why you can't get pregnant. And if it was said visiting this place brings blessings of children, they'd even go on a trip together. My parents always acted on whatever Maria suggested, so to me it was just them doing their usual thing. However, one day Maria made a sarcastic comment to me. "Because you're not married and not making any effort to show a grandchild's face, I have to go through all this trouble. Must be nice for you living the easy single life. Don't you want to get married and move out? Oh, but with that plain face of yours, no man would come near you. You need a bit more appeal. Should I teach you how to do your makeup?" She laughed. I was irked by her words, but I knew arguing back would only lead to her throwing a fit, making things worse, so I chose to stay silent. Maria has always been confident that she's more loved by our parents than I am, often speaking boldly to me. Then one day, Maria got pregnant. Even someone like her gets visited by the stork. I wondered if Maria could really become a mother, but remembering her husband, I thought maybe it'll be okay with him. Maria quit her job easily, saying, "Being pregnant, I don't want to be a burden at work and I want to focus on raising my child." However, her husband seemed to think that raising a child and having a stay-at-home wife wasn't realistic with his earnings alone. But Maria didn't listen to him and quit her job on her own accord. One day when I returned from work, my room's door was slightly open. About 10 in, I'm a neat person, so I never leave closets or drawers open, and moreover, always close the door tightly. My parents wouldn't have entered to clean since I do all the cleaning apprehensively. I opened the door to my room and was shocked. Everything was gone. I wasn't one for having a lot of stuff, but things I've cherished since childhood were supposed to be stored in labeled boxes in the closet. My parents bought me a dictionary for my 10th birthday. My grandparents gave me a wallet when I turned 15 as a gift, and now my diploma certificates, trophies, and albums are all gone. These were items I kept because no matter how worn out or old they were precious to me. Everything that was supposed to be there until this morning disappeared without a trace. Standing alone in the empty room, I heard a familiar voice from behind. "Oh, did you come back? I decided to come back home for my childbirth." Looking at my sister's face, I immediately knew she must have moved out my stuff. "Maria, where did you put my things? In the closet?" I asked in a panic, but my sister said with a laugh, "Why are you so flustered? It wasn't anything important, right? It was just junk." Hearing my precious belongings referred to as junk, anger surged within me. "What's junk to you is important to me. Give them back now. And how dare you move all my stuff out while I'm not around? That's insane." It must have been the first time she saw me raise my voice like that, so she was surprised with wide eyes. She spat out, "I've already thrown them away. I think this is the first time in my 27 years of life that I've been this angry and I couldn't stop. Enough is enough. It's outrageous to throw away someone's belongings without permission. Put everything back right now, but, my sister unapologetically said, "It's already been picked up by the garbage truck." "It's impossible to get it back now," she said, looking at me as if I were ridiculous. Then she added, "What's the big deal anyway? Getting so mad over some junk? Are you crazy? Don't yell like that. It's bad for my baby," while blatantly rubbing her belly. And then she continued, "I've decided to keep living here even after the baby is born. It's going to be hard after childbirth, and Mom and Dad want to see their grandchild every day. And since Mike is going to be staying here too, just my room won't be enough, right? So I decided to use your room too. You understand, right?" You're such a disgrace to our parents. I was completely flabbergasted by her utterly selfish actions. Coming home for childbirth is supposed to be a temporary return, before and after giving birth, but she's planning to live here with her husband and child. That's not just a temporary stay, that's moving in. And on top of that, she's unilaterally branding me as a disgrace, and my anger just boiled over. Do you even realize how disgraceful you are staying at home without getting married? I'm going to show our parents their grandchild and live here so they can see my baby every day. Who do you think is really helping our parents? It was clear she was blaming me, but I couldn't just stand there and listen. If you want to live in this house as a family, then it's something the whole family should discuss. Especially since you want to use my room, you should have said something beforehand. If you had a set date to come back. But before I could finish, my sister cut me off by banging on my room door loudly. Shut up! See, you're always making a fuss about everything. That's why I made it so you'd have to leave. It's so annoying. That's just her being defensive. She's the one who's at fault for planning to use someone's room and throwing out the belongings of the person currently living there, yet she talks as if she's the victim. My sister kept banging on the door over and over. Get lost, disappear, never come back. I was just dumbfounded. Fine, I'll leave as you wish. I don't have any belongings to pack anyway, so no need for packing time. The anger that had built up so much had now vanished into sheer astonishment. I even felt like I never wanted to see her again. I turned around and headed straight for the entrance. My parents didn't seem to notice me leaving. Just after I had gotten home, my dad was on the phone, probably bragging to a relative about how his pregnant daughter was coming back to live with them permanently. My mom seemed to be in the kitchen, possibly making my sister's favorite dishes, humming a tune. I wasn't living with my family expecting anything in return. Even as children, I understood the difference in how my sister and I were treated because she had a charm about her and knew how to sweet-talk our parents. But even as an adult, taking care of most things at home, this is how I'm treated despite allocating most of my salary to household expenses and the mortgage to make our lives easier. And they welcome my sister, who hasn't contributed a dime, with open arms. The negative aspects of my parents I had tried to ignore, along with my sister's actions, morphed into disdain. Without saying goodbye or see you later, I opened the front door. No one, neither my parents nor my sister, called out to me before the door closed behind me. A week later, at the end of the month, was payday. Normally, it would be the day I transferred living expenses and mortgage payments into my dad's account, but I didn't make any deposits. I had no obligation to pay the mortgage for a house I no longer lived in. The mortgage was originally taken out by my dad, so it should have been planned with his income in mind, ensuring it could be paid back without strain. There shouldn't be any financial issues just because I stopped contributing. However, my mom called me in a panic a while later. Nancy, it's terrible. We've received a delinquency notice for the mortgage. I checked and there's no money in your father's account, she rattled on before I could even respond, clearly flustered. Nancy, do you know why? You didn't withdraw it, did you? Contrary to her panicked tone, I responded calmly. All I did was stop making deposits. I didn't withdraw anything. If you're talking about a missed mortgage payment, then it means the automatic withdrawal didn't go through, right? Did you make sure there was enough balance on the withdrawal date? You didn't make a deposit? Why? My mom muttered in utter confusion, which made me just as puzzled. Well, because it was agreed that I'd contribute to the living expenses and the mortgage since I was living at home. If I moved out, I wouldn't keep paying, right? I'm not living there anymore. It seemed like she finally understood after I said that, as I could hear her catching her breath softly. Right. Then you don't need to pay for living expenses, but could you still contribute to the mortgage? You should have enough to spare even living alone, right? Sorry, but that's impossible. My current rent alone costs $10,000. I'm stretched thin as it is, so I can't afford to pay for a mortgage on a house I'll never return to. $10,000? You're just an employee, right? How could you afford such a place? My mom's voice was filled with shock, and I sighed. It's the same amount I used to give home every month, remember? Asking me now, it's clear you really weren't interested in me. In that case, I can't discuss money matters with you anymore. Right now, it seems like you only see me as a wallet. I could hear my mom whimpering on the other end of the line. She repeated no was more feeble than I'd ever heard. I didn't feel sorry for her. It's been a month since I quietly left home. Yet there's no concern for my well-being, only money. It's painfully clear they're interested only in my money, not me. That's why I never mentioned that besides my main job, I also do a wide range of side jobs online. making my total income far surpass my father's monthly salary. I had been contributing $10,000 a month, partly as savings to the mortgage that still has 15 years left. But my mom thought that was my father's income. Given his age and years of service, it's perhaps understandable she thought so. But didn't she ever notice the exact amount being deposited every month? Even a glance at my dad's payslip would show otherwise. Ultimately, she didn't care where the money came from. That's probably why she didn't notice when the monthly income dropped by more than half. Only when the mortgage withdrawals failed due to insufficient funds, leading to a collection notice by mail, did she finally realizing only after it's gone in a way that's very much like her. And I couldn't help but give a thin smile. Lately, caught up in first grandchild fever, it seems they've been splurging on expensive items like a baby crib, stroller, designer baby clothes, and maternity photos, all because my sister asked for them. But if Nancy doesn't make a deposit, we won't be able to make as meat from now on. Could you send some money as remittance? I already told you that's impossible. Why not ask Maria, who's going to live with you, to contribute some to the living expenses? If that's not enough, maybe Mom could work more hours? My words were met with a shriek from my mom. Maria just gave birth. How can I increase my hours when she needs help with the baby? It'd be too much. Are you suggesting Maria should work too? How can you say something so awful? I didn't mean it like that. If Maria and her husband are going to live with you, it makes sense for them to contribute to the living expenses. Didn't I do the same? Plus, Mike is still working, right? Are you planning to live together without him contributing anything? I tried to respond as calmly as possible to avoid agitating her further, but there was none. Well, I'm going to hang up now. I don't plan to contact you or Dad or Maria anymore, so I'll block all of you once we hang up. You can delete my contact information too. Bye. I ended the call on my smartphone. The last thing I heard was my mom's stunned "what?" before she could call again. I quickly set my phone to block all three of them. After completing the setting, I took a deep breath and walked over to the window of my living room. From my apartment on the 25th floor, I had to look down to see people outside. After leaving home, I moved into what you'd call a high-rise luxury apartment. Actually, my side income had exploded, allowing me to save up to $20,000 a month even after sending $10,000 home. Remembering how my mom would spend any money she had, I'm glad I never suggested paying off the mortgage in a lump sum. After all, my parents wanted me out. Maria couldn't have moved my bed and table by herself when she was nearly due. Clearly, someone helped her. While I'd like to think Mike wouldn't clear out a room of its lived-in items, if such a large-scale move had happened, both my parents would have noticed. They were home all day when I was the only one out working, yet they said nothing when I got back and ignored me as I left. Whether they were manipulated by Maria or not, it's clear my parents were complicit in driving me out. Realizing my parents and sister were all the same made me give up everything and decide to leave home. At that moment, if I had paid off the mortgage in full, the three of them would be living comfortably in a spacious house. I couldn't stand the thought of that. That's why I chose a high-rise condo for my new home. I did it out of spite because I remembered how excited we all got watching TV as a family, talking about how we'd love to live in such a place. But living here turned out to be far more comfortable than I expected. My own furniture, a space undisturbed by anyone else, the freedom to live on my own earnings. It felt exhilarating to make my mom think I was living in an expensive home, especially after contacting them only when they needed something. I might have bragged a bit too much by saying my rent was $10,000 more than it actually is, but my mom never caught on. And what made me happiest was getting along well with my neighbors on the same floor and those above and below. I thought there might be salary comparisons or bragging about the number of cars owned, but everyone is so humble, making it a very pleasant environment. 3 months later, my peaceful life was disrupted. Just as I was leaving the office, my sister grabbed my shoulder from behind. "Hey, there's something I need to talk to you about." Her lips trembled as she spoke. After giving birth and in the midst of childcare, her skin and hair appeared more worn than a year ago, yet her charm was still intact, catching the attention of my colleagues and employees from other companies as they left the office. "Sorry, but I have plans in no time now. If it's about home, talk to Mom," I said, trying to gently remove her hand. Her eyes quickly filled with tears, on the verge of breaking down, attracting some disdainful glances from around us. Pushing her away now and being seen as cold-hearted by strangers seemed too troublesome. Reluctantly, I faced her as she begged. I sighed and suggested we go to a cafe near the station, to which she happily agreed. Actually, I've been having an affair, and Mike found out. He's talking about divorce. This was her line right after we ordered at the cafe, sounding like something out of a drama. He did a DNA test on the baby without telling me. Turns out the baby isn't his. He's furious and talking divorce, she mumbled, seemingly aware that it was something I didn't want to hear. But I was on the verge of confusion with each new fact revealed. Something about filing to terminate parental rights. I didn't quite understand everything he said, but he mentioned he won't pay us a penny and he'll be asking for alimony. You're rich, right, big sis? Can't you do something? I was so flabbergasted I couldn't even find my voice. It's normal not to want to pay child support if the child isn't yours. I couldn't comprehend my sister's nerves in asking me to resolve this. Why don't you ask your affair partner to help pay? I can't do that. It was just a fling because I liked his face, and we went on a few dates. I cut ties as soon as I found out I was pregnant. Did you think you wouldn't get caught? I I thought Mike would forgive me if I did. In the end, she must have really underestimated her own husband. Then Mike didn't forgive me at all. Instead, he said he's always hated how I acted like a princess and how our parents pressured us from the start of our marriage to have kids. Terrible, right? I envied my sister's ability to blame everyone else. I can't pay the alimony, and Mom and Dad say they don't have the money either, so you pay it. My sister assumed, without any malice, that it was only natural I would pay. The sister who had called all my belongings junk and thrown them away. I was utterly dumbfounded by her expectation that someone would always bail her out. Without hiding my disgust, I stood up silently, and my sister quickly paled, grabbing my hand with both of hers. Okay, I apologize. I'm sorry for throwing away your stuff without asking. I apologized, so it's all good now, right? Hurry up and give me the money. The chill ran down my spine at her pleading voice, looking up at me with puppy eyes. I shook off her hand and said, Ridiculous. Why should I pay for your affair's consequences? Let me make it clear, sister or not, doesn't matter. I absolutely despise you. I have nothing but contempt for you as a person. I wouldn't help you even if you begged. Saying this, I left the coffee price on the table without waiting for our order to arrive and headed for the exit, ignoring my sister's deliberately loud crying meant to attract attention. I told the waiter the payment was on that table and left the cafe. My sister thought that making a scene would make me feel guilty and come back, no matter how much she cried or pleaded with a sorrowful voice. I ignored her and kept walking, even as she got up and rushed towards me. Fearing what she might do if caught, I made sure to run towards areas with lots of people, though I thought it was reckless post-pregnancy. I had no intention of stopping. I must have walked for over an hour past stores, bookshops, and the shopping mall around the station. Finally, I took a deep breath and headed back home. Riding the elevator up to the 25th floor, I quickly unlocked my door and slipped inside. The moment I locked the door behind me, the intercom rang. My intercom seldom goes off. I rarely use delivery services, and my neighbors usually call ahead if they need something. My heart pounded as the bell rang at such a timing, rare in this salesperson's scarce building. The intercom rang once, then again, its intervals growing shorter, as if someone was pressing it repeatedly. I steeled myself for what was next. The monitor was dark. I thought it was broken and leaned in closer, only to realize the darkness was someone's pupils. And instinctively I swatted it away. In doing so, I accidentally hit the answer button, and immediately a voice I recognized earlier resounded, "Just pay up quietly, loser." Ah, that must be Maria. Anger welled up more than fear. I thought I had managed to avoid her, but she had completely figured out where I live. Peering into the intercom at zero distance felt like something out of a horror movie. Without responding, Maria's insults only grew. What started as paying her alimony turned into paying her $2 million as compensation for the inconvenience she caused, and then she demanded I give up my home. I didn't know where to go with this anymore. I silently picked up the phone and called the security desk on the first floor. It seemed they were already handling it, because even as I was on the phone, I could see through the monitor that my sister was being dragged away. I confirmed that the person being removed was my sister, and asked them not to let her through under any circumstances, apologizing repeatedly while apologizing with the phone in hand. In the end, Maria never pressed my apartment's intercom again. The security personnel must have handled it appropriately. Later, I heard from neighbors back home that the family house was put up for sale. Maria and Mike continued to clash, heading towards a lawsuit without giving an inch to each other. But as Maria was clearly in the wrong, hearing that legal fees might be included in the compensation, she finally gave up. In the end, Maria had to pay Mike the amount of alimony he requested. It seems she submitted DNA test results to the court showing no biological relation to the child, which relieved her of any child support obligations. Maria apparently had no savings at all, and the responsibility for the alimony payment fell on my parents. However, due to falling behind on mortgage payments, the bank foreclosed on the house. With no way to cover the mortgage due to reckless spending and taking on the alimony, my parents sold the house and used the money to pay off the housing loan. As a result, the family home was sold, and the four of them moved into a cheaper place nearby. Even though my dad's income should have been enough to live on, the sudden drop in their standard of living caused stress to accumulate, constantly souring the atmosphere. Plus, they couldn't forget the lifestyle they had when I was contributing, so my dad's salary was almost gone within a few days of deposit. Eventually, my mom continued her part-time work, and Maria somehow managed to find a new job despite using daycare. She's overwhelmed with housework, childcare, and work, less than a year after giving birth, leaving her spirit in tatters. The only consolation is that Maria's child is growing up healthy. However, I can't see them raising the child without worries. So meddling as I may be, I had a neighbor give them some flyers for childcare support. On my end, my dedication at work since I was a new graduate has been recognized, and I was promoted. I'm now leading a group on a new project. My side businesses are also doing well, with a gradual increase in income. One of my side gigs as a web writer took off when a series of articles I wrote was published as a book. The content covering topics not widely available online became popular and even made it to the bestseller list. This success positively impacted my other side jobs, creating a virtuous cycle. Challenging new things, feeling just the right amount of tiredness, and returning to my comfortable home every day, I am truly happy.